Hi, this is Yadi Caro. I'm an organizational psychology practitioner and tech and project team coach. So, welcome to the Hardcore Soft Skills podcast. Today, we listen to the second part of my conversation with Enrique Acosta Gonzalez in the Developer, the Leader Within podcast. This took place via a LinkedIn Live, and I have the link on the show notes so you can see the full video. Today, we focused on emotional intelligence, how to build it, what are some practices we can implement now, and we also discuss work ethic. How can we build that as leaders and within our teams? I want to know what you have learned, so please let me know via LinkedIn in the link in the show notes, and also you can contact me via my website, hardcoresofskillspodcast.com. Now, let's listen.
Let's talk about emotional intelligence. I just spoke about emotional intelligence a couple of weeks ago on my
Yeah.
podcast,
Mm-hmm.
and it was very interesting the topics and the way that uh, uh, that was presented by Rich. But I want to get your take on emotional intelligence because uh, we're we have always needed this skill as leaders, right? We've always needed it. Some people will shy away from, no, that's kind of like, nah, that's not me, and that's not how I do it. If you ask me now, uh, the way the uh, the not the election, but the way things are coming to fruition in administrative decisions for the nation, this, that, and the other, we have to be very conscious that not everyone is elated. Not everyone is having a party. There are some people that were expecting something different and are going through some changes in their expectations for what these next 4 years are going to be. Um, and as leaders, I believe that we have to take at least into thought that telling somebody, who I voted for won, I'm good. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not great leadership. Um,
Absolutely.
be happy that your party won. Be happy. Uh, but there are others that are struggling with how this is going to pan out. And so, if you ask me for the sake of the next 4 years, any right, 4, 6, 8, whatever, leaders have to be emotionally intelligent enough to know that there are some people in their teams, in their workforce, that are impacted mentally, emotionally, and those two actually can show up physically, right? So you have to be. So let's talk about emotional intelligence and how leaders can kind of harness this, especially now.
Yeah. So in emotional intelligence, it's the way I see it in terms of what you are able to achieve as you continue practicing your skills, your quote unquote soft skills. So, because it requires the ability to manage conflict effectively. We're all like learning constantly because, we have our tempers. We get passionate about things, and we need just to be able to manage a situation in an effective way, so we create, we are able to get along with others to just get the work done, have interpersonal relationships. Doesn't mean that we're going to be soft, quote unquote, and just become best friends with everybody. It's a matter of how we manage things. So having tools to manage conflict, that is something that we have to be constantly learning. Also the ability to be curious, and as you mentioned, in terms of the if my party won or if your party won, we just have to be able to be curious about the other. A lot of times online we tend to be very polarizing, like, hey, just, you know this party is all like this type of people, and putting labels on everybody instead of being curious about what is it that brought you to either vote for this person. And that's, of course, if we wanted to have that conversation, we don't need necessarily to bring this all these topics at work, but being curious about the other people instead of being putting labels on folks, and living in your echo chamber. So as leaders, definitely important to continue developing all those skills that will make you more emotionally intelligent. Conflict resolution, taking time for yourself to really stress. How do you manage the stress? How do you allow to build the resiliency of the team when circumstances they need to adapt quickly? So it's a constant practice, when we focus on tools, techniques, then we are able to get to that point. So it's very important to be, as a leader, just aspire to be, try to be more emotionally intelligent every day. So very, very important.
Yeah, and simple questions. And I was part of this organization. Love this piece of it. Loved it, but loved this piece of it because it was during the pandemic, and every Monday we would not start work until we met together. And this was the CEO.
Mm,
They they would ask each person in the meeting room, and obviously it was virtual. Um, how are you? How are you? And you wouldn't move until you, no joke, said how you doing.
nice.
It didn't matter if it was bad, and you if you was good, you was good. But giving that space, that psychologically safe space to say, I'm not doing good today. I had this come up, and I had that come up. Um, and they were good enough to provide a separate kind of, okay, let's talk about that later. And there was some prayer around it, or people would express, hey, I feel you. I'm gonna have you in my thoughts all day today.
Yeah.
It helps you understand, right? We couldn't do anything physically. We weren't there. Person was on their own, but just to know that there was somebody on our side during the darkest days, even if we had to work through it,
Yeah.
was a huge lifter of a load that we necessarily didn't have to carry that day. So
That's amazing.
leaders have an opportunity to change the tide for folks, and it's important to do that. You do it as you see fit, right? No directive here, but it's important. Your people are counting on that type of support, and so I
Yeah.
hope you, as a leader, are providing that in one way, shape, or form.
Yeah,
Now,
I love how you're
yeah,
saying that in terms of the approach for that approach that that leader took in terms of understanding how are you, and it's important to remember it's not a matter of like being soft, like when we see it despectively, it's as you mentioned in the military, there military is filled with guys and gals that are like the toughest badasses out there, and it's important that to recognize that that just people just need the ability to connect, and being able to have that safe space to connect, understand each other. You could be your grumpy old self, but just the ability to connect with others, being authentic, and from there then get to work. I think it's a very valuable example of what you provided there.
yeah, great. Now, talking about work, let's talk about work ethic, right? Work
Hmm.
ethic. Um, much can be said, and I remember when I was a kid, you know, uh, this generation, and then my kids are born this generation, and then my grandkids are born this generation, right? Everybody has something to say about this generation. Uh, but they don't accept that this generation is a product of the previous generation.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, you know, work ethic. A lot of people have different thoughts around work ethic. Obviously, coming from a military environment, life, things are on the spot. Like 0600, you roll call. You got PT 0500, and you're gonna go take your shower real quick.
Yeah.
5 to 7 minutes. Get in your uniform. You're gonna be here, and then we're gonna do this, and we. So it's very directive, very scheduled. Everything is like boom, boom, cookie cutter. Really, you just gotta be there, right? And even in those environments, we have some people that just don't have the same level of work ethic. It's something that you have to build up, and you can, because I've seen a person come in late, and then we've worked with them, and we've helped them develop some things, and then they're the ones there that are 15 minutes early, right? So uh, let's talk about work ethic. There's a lot to be said, about how people view the generation, and
Yeah.
what's important to them. But what do you have to say around work ethic and how we can build to have a good one?
Yeah, and being in myself a geriatric millennial, so I kind of like in the end of getting working on almost on the Gen Xer side, but also having to work with different generations too, and sometimes with younger generations, I was like the same way, like this generation. So we've all had our own kind of misconceptions as well. I think it's important to recognize that it goes back to establishing the guidelines for how are we going to work as a team and as an organization, defining that. So if you say as an organization we're going to start at 0600 and these are the specific reasons, you could define those things, and later along the way perhaps those generations, those of us that may not want to wake up and be in a meeting at 0600, we could start negotiating some of the approaches in terms of, hey, I'm most effective during these times of the day and I'm able to produce this particular goal. So it comes down to what goals you want to achieve in the at work. It's not just a matter of maintaining the culture just because. You got to think of the goals. And also when it comes to the work ethic, it's just very important to have that, and that's part of motivation. So when you have, as the example that you mentioned, that the person that refused to come in early, I presume then they were later motivated to come in early. It's part of having clear guidelines. So if I know I have a purpose in this job, I know I'm going to be able to adapt better to the particular culture. If I'm a lot of the people, regardless of the generation, want to have some autonomy on their work too. So they want to be able to define what things I want to be working on, how I want to do things. So it's important to consider that too. And just to understand that their work is making an impact too. So once you
Mm.
consider the bigger picture, that part of the work ethic showing at specific time either becomes a little easier, but also it's possible to negotiate better as a team.
Absolutely. And you mentioned a piece there that reminded me of a situation. So, work ethic, and we've been talking about, we talked about communication skills, teamwork, collaboration, problem solving, adaptability, flexibility, time management, EI, and now work ethic. But I'll tell you, there was a moment that I had a revelation I was at the senior enlisted academy at the time, and in resident, so we're there locked in doing all kinds of stuff. But I had a country brief for a country I was getting deployed to, and that was on purpose because I really wanted to dig into the background. Well, when I realized through my research the true nature of the relationship between the US and that nation and what it was that we were really doing in the background, then that whole deployment took on a whole different flavor.
Yeah.
So I was like, whoa. So I took that revelation back to my team. We were gearing up for the deployment, but we had never been presented, or I had never heard a leader present as I did, and not because I did it, it's just the nature of the information, the clarity around the mission and why it was important to the national security
Yeah.
in terms of inter country type of relationship. I never saw a team go from oh man, we're going, here we go, another deployment. This is to a no joke, ready to go do that thing and come back. It was it was a
Yeah,
miracle.
that's
And
awesome.
their work ethic, not that they were challenged in any way, because it was a great team, but their work ethic took a jump because of the communication piece and how I was able to portray that revelation I got through my experience and how important that work was really right. And so
Yeah,
um amazing.
that's wonderful.
So yeah,
Yeah.
work ethic can be impacted by you as a leader.
Yeah, it's great that you mentioned that example and great that you did that because a lot of the times it goes back to what is the goal, what is the purpose, the bigger picture. Because again, we want to go to work and we want to know that we're making an impact, even if our task is this specific thing and it doesn't directly affect the person. The fact that you were able to communicate that vision of here's the bigger picture, we are willing to do more. Like, how can I help? What little thing can I do today to help the bigger mission? Having that clarity and having leaders communicate that to the teams makes a great difference and gets people motivated.
Yeah, I saw it and I was like, wow, that's the
Hmm.
key. The
Yeah,
key is don't get upset when they say why. Have the answer.
yeah,
If you're the
exactly.
leader, have the answer.
Hmm.
And I'll tell you that answer, because we normally be like, oh, why you asking why? You know, that's what I said to do.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't help anything
It's like a
except your
parent.
ego. Except your ego. That's
Yeah.
it. That's all that helps. Um,
Hmm.
but having the why, having the answer,
Yeah,
just catapulted that team in a direction that deployment was. Not only did it go flawlessly in terms of our operations, uh, they had a great experience out there,
that's
and
wonderful.
it was wonderful. So let's talk about two more things because we're coming up on a 49 minute here. Um, Critical thinking and interpersonal skills. Let's take interpersonal skills first, because we'll end on critical thinking, but interpersonal skills, uh, kind of sort of, if you look at all the topics we've been talking about this last hour, so there's elements in there that facilitate you having better interpersonal skills. But if you ask me in terms of interpersonal skills, you got to have a good relationship with yourself.
Absolutely. Glad you mentioned that. Yep. Yeah.
So tell us about that.
Yeah, in terms of before, in order to get along with each other, with other people, we also need to look at ourselves. So it starts with when it comes to connecting, not just to connect with people, but connect with yourself.
Yeah.
Understand what are my good qualities, what are my strengths, what are the things that I know I need to improve on. So doing that self-assessment and also asking feedback from people that you trust and that you love, and in terms of what things do I need to improve, so you know how you come off to other people. Because I could be thinking here I'm like the nicest person, and you're like, no, 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 you're very passive aggressive. So like, okay, I need
Mm,
to be able
mm,
to kind of recognize those things and think through. I'm like, maybe you're right, this could be taken the wrong way. So doing a self-assessment, having the self-awareness as leaders, as members of a team, to know what we bring to the table, and also recognizing, hey, these are the areas I need to improve upon. That then will help us with how we get along with others, and understand we could give them a warning. Hey, I could, if I do this, let me know. I'm trying to, be a better listener. I tend to interrupt because I get too excited with the topic, so just let me know. So that helps us have better relationships with others too, understanding ourselves, what we need to improve and what good things we can bring to the table.
absolutely. I've had a lot of folks that that try to get along with other people, and I'll hear them at lunch talking about how bad they are at, and I'm like,
Yeah.
how you gonna teach me? You can't even get along with yourself.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, so I, it is. yeah, that's self-deprecating, that's self-loathing, that condemnation that a lot of people are challenged with. Hey, folks, that trickles into your team, you know,
Mhm.
because they see it, they hear it.
Yeah.
Actually, your actions sometimes tell it to them, and then you're going to try to sell them, "Hey, let's get along," right? And you have to be mindful of all those things.
Yeah.
Um,
And you bring forward in terms of the part of how do we, express positive things about ourselves, the part of bragging, which for some of us is like difficult. And one of the good techniques to be able to brag better is to think about what outcomes you achieve for other people. Like, hey, I'm very proud of this thing I did with the other team. It was a super helpful learning experience. And also being in when you have your interpersonal relationships, aside from just either talking about yourself either in the negative way or the positive way all the time. Just be curious about other people, ask a lot of questions about them instead of making it about you. So that's a way, by research, that it's proven to be like people will like you more the more you ask about about them as well. So important to come off, don't be too negative on yourself, and also be curious about people too.
Absolutely. Now let's end with critical thinking. Now, the world is busy.
Hmm.
People's lives are busy. There are. We was talking about you. My wife, a prime example, has got 10,000 things going on. Um, and I don't know how she does it. She does. Hopefully, it'll be 9.99 by the time we're done. Um, but critical thinking for a person that's flooded with a thousand things to think about. Uh, if you ask me in terms of critical thinking, you have to be able to think through these things
Yeah.
that you're leading people to. And if you're flooded, how can you? I
Yeah.
mean, I don't understand how people can do it. Some people do it at their detriment, right? Some people do it, and the team is the one that pays. But what can I do when I am in this whirlwind of a world, to try to get myself to the point where at my job site and with my teams, we are
Hmm.
thinking clearly.
Yeah, and that's something that's very tricky for some of us. That what my husband, he says, my brain is always going with something that for me to relax is like, what do you mean relax? What does that mean? So
Hmm.
it's difficult, and that's what we're trying to be allow us to make ourselves a habit to spend time of white space. So, for example, for me, going out for a run and try not to listen to anything and just kind of just going for a run for an hour kind of helps me think through ideas, and that's how I come up with different ideas. Just disconnect for a little bit. Or even journaling really helps to clarify the mind, particularly as you write about something or a problem. I know in terms of other people might be take meditation or things. I try to quiet the mind, and it's very difficult for me, but my form of relaxing is going for a run. So it's important to make it a habit, for particularly for leaders, of like allocate time on your calendar to like whatever 30 minutes to be no calls, no nothing. Either you could do it at home or you could do it at work, of just being able to think through a problem, jot some things down on a wall, on a whiteboard. So just making it a habit to give ourselves time to think every single day. We may not have a whole hour, we could have 20 minutes. Take the time that you need, but that could give you a lot of clarity. And as you say, Enrique, it's a lot of the times that by not doing that, the teams are the ones that pay the price of just being go go go. So important to make it a habit to allocate time for white space and critical thinking.
Absolutely. Our podcast is sponsored by Ascend Meditations. It's an app. I
Nice.
love it. It gives you whatever time you say. And if you have not seen it, I'll make sure to put their information in the comments for y'all. But you can say, give me a 5-minute meditation using this type of music, or I the way I do it is give me a 15-minute meditation using Psalm 35.
Nice. Hmm.
And this it's driven by AI, so it's pulling from, and it will build me a 10 to 15-minute meditation
Yeah.
that I could do on my break and
Yeah.
just kind of like dump everything and then go back to being able to. So a lot of times resources is one of those things. Um, but having an ability to, and we when we was talking about time management, right? What's important? That's what
Hmm.
you'll spend your time on. And if you kind of build this into your workflow, you'll be able to take some of that anxiety and all the noise of the world and push it to the side, so that at your work site you can be able to think clearly and have that ability to critically think when your team needs it. Because if there's anything that the team needs, is a leader that during the toughest of times can say, all right, this is what we're going to do,
Yeah.
right? Not, oh Lord, everybody, everybody for themselves.
Exactly.
So, uh, Yadi, thank you so much. As we're coming to a close here, I want to give you the opportunity to share with the audience, where can they find you, what you have coming up, where can they support you? I know you talked about the podcast, share some of that so that they can get in touch with you and support you in those ways.
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, you can visit the website hardcoresoftskillspodcast.com, and that's where you can listen to the episodes there. I just launched a new season that started yesterday, and this season I usually have interviews, but this season I'm going to have a lot of smaller, shorter episodes answering questions that I get from the audience. So, if you have any questions about soft skills, I'll be happy to answer those on the podcast. And also here on LinkedIn, I love to connect and be really connect with people and be active here as well. And on the website, you'll see in terms of opportunities for coaching, workshops, the courses that I have developed with. In one of those is LinkedIn, in a super short course on persuasion that I advise you to just visit, and I'll share the link on. I have the link on my profile, so you can check it out. So yeah, I'm just very happy to be learning from people and from experts as well, and sharing what I know. So thank you for the opportunity, Enrique.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, folks, we'll make sure to put all that information in the comments so that you can get to those spots and help her with the podcast. Subscribe, support,
Mhm.
make some comments. I see a lot of them on LinkedIn. We'll go back there and make sure to address those. But thank you everybody for being with us as we discuss hardcore soft skills and what you can do about them if you're challenged in one way or another. Yadi, thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody, we'll see each other next time.